April 18, 1942. Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe stood on the bridge of submarine I-68, scanning the horizon 600 miles east of Japan. His orders were to patrol for American carriers that had just launched bombers against Tokyo. The Doolittle raid had shocked the Imperial Japanese Navy to its core, not because of the physical damage, minimal though it was, but because it exposed a vulnerability Japanese naval planners had refused to acknowledge. American carriers could strike anywhere, anytime, and the combined fleet could not stop them. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. Japan possessed 6 fleet carriers in April 1942. The United States had 7 in the Pacific, with more under construction. Japanese intelligence estimated America would commission over 100 carriers of various types by 1945. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto understood what this meant. Time favored America, absolutely. Every month the war continued. American industrial capacity would produce carriers faster than Japan could sink them. Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, who led the Pearl Harbor attack, wrote in his diary 3 months after that victory a passage that revealed growing concern among Japanese naval aviators. "We achieved tactical surprise at Pearl Harbor and destroyed the American battleship fleet. But the carriers were at sea. Those carriers are now hunting us. Our intelligence reports their locations imprecisely. We do not know where they are until they strike. This is the opposite of what our doctrine requires. We should dictate the terms of engagement. Instead, the Americans choose when and where to fight." The concern proved justified at Coral Sea in May 1942. For the first time in naval history, carriers fought a battle without surface ships ever sighting each other. The engagement ended inconclusively in tactical terms, but strategically it revealed something that terrified Japanese planners. American carriers could absorb damage that would sink Japanese carriers and remain operational. Carrier Shokaku took 3 bomb hits at Coral Sea and required months of repair. Carrier Yorktown took similar damage and was repaired in 3 days at Pearl Harbor through round-the-clock work by repair crews who performed miracles of damage control. The carrier that should have been sidelined for months fought at Midway 3 weeks later. Captain Takahisa Amagai, damage control officer on Shokaku, filed a report after Coral Sea that Naval Headquarters largely ignored. American damage control procedures exceed ours significantly. Their carriers are designed with redundant systems, compartmentalization superior to our designs, and repair capabilities we cannot match. More critically, American carriers operate with support infrastructure that enables rapid repair of damage that would permanently cripple our vessels. We observed Yorktown absorb damage similar to Shokaku, yet American radio intercepts suggest that carrier returned to combat readiness in days, not months. If accurate, this indicates systemic advantages we cannot overcome through superior tactics or pilot skill. Midway proved Amagai's assessment catastrophically correct. June 4, 1942, remains the date Japanese naval officers cite as the moment they knew the war was lost. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were sunk in a single day. American dive bombers caught 3 carriers with armed and fueled aircraft on deck during the brief window when they were most vulnerable. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, launched strikes that crippled Yorktown before American bombers found and destroyed Hiryu as well. Commander Tamatsu Oishi survived the sinking of Kaga and spent hours in the water before rescue. His interrogation report, filed after the war, described what Japanese survivors discussed while awaiting pickup. "We knew we had lost more than 4 carriers. We had lost the core of our naval aviation capability. Those carriers represented years of construction, trained pilots we could not replace, and operational experience that died with the ships. The Americans lost Yorktown, but we knew they had other carriers and more coming. We had no replacements. The mathematics were clear even then. America could afford to trade carriers with us. We could not afford to trade with them. The asymmetry extended beyond simple numbers. American carriers operated with logistical support that enabled sustained operations at intensities Japanese carriers could not match. Lieutenant Zenji Abe, air operations officer on WWII, observed American carrier operations during the Guadalcanal campaign and filed detailed reports that reveal the disparity. American carriers launched strikes continuously throughout daylight hours. Their aircraft return, rearm, refuel, and launch again within 90 minutes. We require 3 hours for the same cycle. American carriers carry more aviation fuel, more ordnance, more spare parts. They operate with tanker support that enables them to remain on station indefinitely. Our carriers must withdraw to replenish after intensive operations. This means American carriers control the operational tempo. They decide when to engage and when to withdraw. We react to their decisions rather than imposing our will. The Solomon Islands campaign from August 1942 through February 1943 demonstrated this operational advantage repeatedly. Japanese carriers would sortie from truck, steam south to support ground operations, launch strikes, then withdraw to refuel. American carriers operated continuously from bases in the New Hebrides, maintaining constant pressure that Japanese forces could not sustain. Captain Tamichi Hara, destroyer commander who participated in multiple carrier battles, described the psychological impact in post-war interviews. We never knew where American carriers were until they struck. Our reconnaissance was inadequate. Our intelligence was fragmentary. We would plan operations assuming American carriers were distant, then discover they were nearby only when our ships came under air attack. This created constant uncertainty that degraded our effectiveness. Every operation required consideration of American carriers appearing unexpectedly. This defensive mindset contradicted our doctrine of aggressive action. The defensive mindset reflected reality. By mid-1943, American carriers hunted Japanese shipping and installations with impunity, while Japanese carriers husbanded strength for a decisive battle that never came on Japanese terms. The few carrier engagements that occurred demonstrated growing American advantages in aircraft, pilots, and tactics. Philippine Sea in June 1944 revealed how completely the balance had shifted. Japan committed 9 carriers with 450 aircraft against 15 American carriers with 900 aircraft. Japanese planners believed superior pilot skill and land-based air support would offset American numerical advantage. The battle, which American pilots called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, destroyed Japanese naval aviation as an effective force. Commander Masatake Okumiya, who survived the battle aboard carrier Zuikiku, wrote the most comprehensive Japanese analysis of what went wrong. We launched strikes against American carriers expecting to inflict significant damage. Our pilots were less experienced than those lost at Midway and in the Solomons, but we believed they were adequate. They were not. American fighters intercepted our strikes far from their carriers using radar direction. Our formations were shattered before reaching targets. Those aircraft that penetrated American fighter screens faced anti-aircraft fire of unprecedented intensity. Carriers were surrounded by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, all firing proximity-fused shells that created walls of shrapnel. Our losses were catastrophic. Of 450 aircraft committed, fewer than 100 returned. We inflicted minimal damage on American carriers. The battle revealed technological advantages that Japanese forces could not counter. American carriers operated with radar that detected incoming strikes at ranges exceeding 100 miles. Fighter direction officers vectored interceptors to optimal positions. Proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells exploded near aircraft without requiring direct hits. Trained damage control parties contained fires and flooding that would have sunk Japanese carriers. Lieutenant Seikyo Komatsu, fighter pilot who survived Philippine Sea, described the American advantages in detail during post-war interrogation. We approached American carriers expecting to find them clustered for mutual protection as our doctrine required. Instead, they were dispersed across miles of ocean, making it impossible to concentrate attacks. Each carrier operated independently with its own screen of escorts. When we selected a target and began our attack run, fighters appeared from unexpected directions. We could not shake them. They were faster, could dive faster, and their pilots were well trained. Those of us who survived the fighters faced anti-aircraft fire that seemed to fill the sky. I watched 3 aircraft explode simultaneously from a single shell burst. This was not warfare. This was flying into a meat grinder. The meat grinder operated with industrial efficiency that reflected American production capacity. By late 1944, American carriers operated in task groups of 4 to 6 carriers supported by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers in numbers that exceeded the entire Japanese combined fleet. These task groups roamed the Pacific, striking targets at will, while Japanese carriers hit in port, preserving strength for battles that could no longer change the war's outcome. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, who commanded Japanese carrier forces after Midway, understood the futility by mid-1944. His orders for the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 reflected desperate acceptance of reality. He would use his remaining carriers as decoys to lure American carriers away from the Philippines, allowing Japanese battleships to attack the invasion fleet. The plan required sacrificing Japan's last operational carriers to create an opportunity for surface forces. The sacrifice succeeded tactically but failed strategically. American carriers took the bait, steaming north to engage Ozawa's force. American aircraft sank 4 Japanese carriers with minimal American losses. But the diversion allowed Japanese battleships to nearly reach the invasion beaches before being turned back by destroyers and escort carriers in a separate action. The Americans lost 1 light carrier and 2 escort carriers. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers and any possibility of future carrier operations. Commander Masatake Okumiya, who survived the battle, wrote in his diary that night, "We have no carriers left. The Americans have dozens. They will strike our home islands at will. We cannot defend against them. Every city, every port, every military installation is now vulnerable to attack from carriers we cannot locate and cannot sink. The war is lost. Only the final agony remains." The final agony came in early 1945 when American carrier task forces began sustained operations against Japan itself. Hundreds of aircraft struck targets throughout the home islands. Japanese defenses, designed to counter high-altitude bombers, proved ineffective against carrier aircraft attacking at medium and low altitudes. The psychological impact was devastating. Captain Atsushi Oi, Naval Staff Officer in Tokyo, described the despair in headquarters. "We track American carrier positions through radio intercepts and submarine reports. We know approximately where they are. We cannot attack them. Our remaining aircraft are husband for defense against invasion. Our submarines cannot penetrate their destroyer screens. We are reduced to watching American carriers destroy our cities and military installations while we plan desperate measures that cannot succeed. The Americans demonstrate their superiority daily. They operate with impunity in our home waters. This humiliation is worse than defeat in battle. The humiliation extended to tactical innovations that Japanese forces could not counter. American carriers pioneered night operations, launching strikes in darkness that caught Japanese defenses completely unprepared. They developed kamikaze suppression tactics using radar picket destroyers and combat air patrols that reduced suicide attack effectiveness. They integrated close air support for ground forces with a precision that Japanese forces never achieved. Lieutenant Commander Haruki Iki, operations officer who survived the war, analyzed American carrier doctrine in a comprehensive report filed in 1946. American carriers represented the ultimate expression of their military philosophy. They combined technological superiority with operational flexibility and overwhelming numbers. Their carriers were better designed than ours, with superior damage control, greater aircraft capacity, and more efficient operations. Their pilots were well-trained and supported by technology we could not match. Their logistics enabled sustained operations we could not counter. Most critically, they had enough carriers to absorb losses and continue offensive operations without pause. We built 6 fleet carriers before the war and could not replace our losses. They built over 100 carriers of all types and could afford to trade losses with us indefinitely. This asymmetry made defeat inevitable once the war extended beyond our initial victories. The asymmetry haunted Japanese naval officers who survived to see American carriers anchor in Tokyo Bay in August 1945. Admiral Matome Agaki, who commanded kamikaze operations in the war's final months, wrote in his diary before his death in a final suicide mission, "The American carriers defeated us not through superior courage or tactical brilliance, though they possessed both. They defeated us through systematic application of industrial capacity to naval warfare. Every advantage we claimed, superior night fighting, superior torpedoes, superior naval aviation, proved temporary or illusory. American carriers improved continuously while ours declined. They learned from defeats and adapted. We could not adapt because we lacked resources to implement lessons learned. That was the fundamental imbalance. They could afford to learn through failure. We could not afford to fail even once. Midway proved this. We never recovered from that single day's losses. They recovered from Pearl Harbor, from Coral Sea, from every setback. The carriers represented everything we lacked: industrial depth, technological innovation, operational flexibility, and the resources to sustain losses while maintaining offensive pressure. Against such advantages, our courage meant nothing.